What's going on, guys? I kind of wanted to give my perspective of this year's CrossFit Games. I'm a huge fan of the sport. I'm a huge fan of fitness, huge fan of programming, and I just kind of wanted to talk about some of the things that did happen this year and the entirety of how it kind of mapped out the way it did of this year's CrossFit Games. I'm going to start with just the overall dynamic of how we got there. I mean, obviously, with the removal of regionals and all these sanctional events and taking the open competitors, that was obviously a hard pill to swallow, right? Everybody knows, if you are a fan of the sport, when we heard about the regional changes and all that stuff going on with just sanctionals and your open qualifiers, it became a really hard pill to swallow. So going into this year's games, you shouldn't have really expected anything less but kind of like the overall dynamic of shock and awe. And, you shouldn't have gone and thinking anything different. So to talk about the very first change of the games being the eliminations, I feel like, the eliminations definitely made it more interesting. I mean, one of the biggest things you hear a lot during the CrossFit Games is people having to do damage control during workouts. And if we're going to crown the fittest on earth, the purpose is to not have to do that much in that quote unquote damage control side of fitness. So I feel that with the cuts, it definitely allowed that factor to be challenged later. Obviously, the very beginning, it being 150 competitors, I mean, the eliminations, it didn't really spark too much, right? Because you figured the big names will shine, and they did. That first event definitely, shook it up enough where you still had your named competitors, but just a handful, right? We're talking a handful. I think maybe 4 names from the men's side, and I'm not sure too much, maybe the same handful of women people that had issues with workout 1 that didn't get by it. But if we look at the progression of the CrossFit Games, right, we didn't really get too bent out of shape of the eliminations until around 40, which is usually where the CrossFit Games kind of were born with, right? 40 men, 40 women, battle it out for, Wednesday to Sunday to crown fittest on earth. So as a spectator, we're going to get a little bent at that change that all of a sudden we're eliminating household names. So that was going to be the shock and awe, whether you liked it or not. I knew that was going to happen. You went in with that. You looked at the event, and you kind of just were like, okay, this is going to hurt people when we got to about 50, 40 people. Now, as far as does that hurt the end result? Now, I can't say I think it hurt the end result because of the new structure. The new structure, remember, is designed to not have damage control events. If you have a damage control event, you are going to either be at the very tail end of that event or you were going to get sent home, right? Which means you're going to need to work on that when you get home from this year's games. Now, before, it wasn't like that. When you struggled with a movement, when it was just 40 men, 40 women for the whole time, you just ate those points, and then you had the battle back experience as a spectator to watch somebody either crawl back or, in its own sense, stay at the end because of one bad event, right? So, in order to really assess if the structure hurt the ending, you'd have to look at the point spreads during those cuts. The names like Cole Sager, Travis Mayer going down. When you saw Brett Frykowski get cut, Sean Sweeney's, the Lucas Esslingers. Yeah, I'm on the men's side of the list. I can go to the women's side too and do the same thing. I think if you're going to analyze the games and how it was programmed for the end result, did I do a good job? I feel like you need to sit with your point spreads. Did those people in the earlier workouts not put out everything they truly had to get those extra 10 points, 12 points when it was 150, when it was 75, when you had the time? You'd have to do the numbers and see if those named competitors that got knocked out by 10 points, 8 points, 15, maybe 20 points, could they have made up that difference in the 150, when you had 150 competitors or 75 competitors during that time? I would love to know. I obviously don't have the answer. All I know is that you'd have to assess that to determine if your frustration should be in the programming side of it, or, was it just that, should that athlete look back and say, should I have pushed here during that part of the event to earn that extra couple places to get those points back? I don't know. To me, it's a matter of, again, look at the numbers. I look forward to, hopefully, maybe they put out some type of behind the whiteboard type things where they show the analyzing stuff. I love reading that to give an idea about that thought. Now, as far as a lot of the penalties that came into play, rules are rules. Rules are rules. At the end of the day, whether it's CrossFit Games or you go to your local competitions, there are rules. There are rules you follow, and who determines the price you pay is whoever designed it. So I'm not mad about any of the penalties that were given. It is what it is. You as a competitor, anybody who's competed before in any sport and anything in their life, even grades, right? Even in school, when you give everything you got and you got a B or an A minus and you should have an A. I mean, you got it what you got, but for the reason at which you're going to be given the excuse. So there's nothing you can do about it. You take it. You can try to argue it. Take it as far as you can, but at the end of the day, whoever makes the rules makes the rules. Now, the one thing I will talk about, because I feel like it was a fun one, was that Matt Frazier and his penalty, which made the CrossFit Games what it was. Now, Matt Frazier would have had a different lead if the penalty of his back falling out wouldn't have happened. But obviously that happened. And it was given an X amount of penalty first time, which shot him down, I believe they said, to 17th or something like that in the workout, which took him out of first. Now, I'm going to try to talk unbiasedly here in the fact of we look at that and we determine why he was given that much time. I don't know. Again, makes the rules. They come up with some general rule of thumb of distance travel probably in a certain amount of time, and given he didn't travel that far with the 50 pounds, they gave him X amount of time, yada yada. They do that work. I know during that event with Cara Webb, no red squats, when she didn't do all the reps, they just counted how many reps she did in transition. They did math, added some numbers, and bam, there was the time. Now, what made it really look fun, as far as from critical standpoint, is the pure video of the look back. Did he see it and continue to run? Now, I'm not going to question Matt Frazier. Obviously, just won the games. But what I will throw out there just for fun, if you're a fan of it, was we didn't question Matt Frazier's integrity at all because of what he's done in the sport. We know who he is in the caliber of a Rich Froning, Scott Panchik, Clara Toomey, Cara Webbs, Cara Saunders now. You look at those names, we know integrity's there, 1,000%. Is that if another competitor who didn't have that same rapport with CrossFit had the same exact video, of a look back, potentially acknowledging their error and deciding to keep going, would they have honored that rule? I don't know. I mean, that makes it fun to think about. If it wasn't Matt Frazier, if it was anybody else, would they have kept the rules the same? Again, it comes down to the person making it. I believe it would have been an interesting situation if it was anybody else but Matt Frazier or a named athlete. Now, we look at that though, and again, people were like, that's aggressive. I mean, again, they did what they did, but people were complaining about the programming. Now this is when I'm going to take into the style, everything. I went in with open mind. Was the programming off? On the men's side, everybody thinks that the sprint was a big hurdle that caused a lot of big names to go out. Again, we need to consider the fact a damage control workout does not give reason of outcome, right? We don't look at damage control and think that they're given a gift. You know, that's what they're weak at. They should get better when it comes to the sport, and it was what it was. Again, it's the rules. Now, did we end up with 10 competitors at the very end on the men's field, where I've watched the games every year since 2012, 2013, and I've watched the previous years when they were first streamed, I think, on YouTube, and then they made it to Netflix, and I've watched them millions of times. Anybody who knows me can tell you that. I can honestly say that the excitement at the very end with the programming on the men's side was as tense as it could be watching Matt Frazier do Matt Frazier things. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, I said Matt Frazier was in his element with the 10 guys. Regardless of who, it could have been anybody. Matt Frazier was in his element of the 10 guys, which means if you watch any of those documentaries, he hated chasing people in previous heats. And that is hard to do when you're not battling people that are standing on the field with you. It's hard to say I can really push myself when you're not looking at it. So I believe that the cuts up to the point were fair and gave you probably the most exciting men's finish that we've ever seen in a long time. I mean, I think the other exciting finish was when Matt Frazier tanked because of the skill of a handstand push-up, and Ben Smith pulled away. Next to that would be when the next one after that was when Rich Froning went into the field into the last of the event against a freshman Matt Frazier and battled it out in the first workout with the rope climb and the overhead squat. It was exciting. I mean, Matt Frazier the years prior, 3 years ago, he had it sealed up before the last day. And it's like, okay, I'll watch the women's side now, because the women's side field was actually a battle. Now, we look at this year's programming for the women's side was kind of your runaway. That's where I feel that the assessment needs to we need to assess where it went wrong, because that to me the only outlier of the programming is on the women's side, and to me, I don't know. I can't really tell you where that hole lies. I'd have to look at the numbers. I'd love to. I love seeing things like that and seeing why outcomes happen, but I have to look at the numbers. Obviously online it doesn't show me the actual cut workouts and where it was by that point. I feel like the rope climb workout in the first one, Tia mentally got to the entire field. I feel like those 4 girls that finished it, because they all were not named, got to the entire field, because the ones that did finish it, I don't know. I'd want to look. I probably can look. Look at this. I forgot to look at the first workout. Let me see something. First cut. The first cut. Your first cut. So let's see. So your first cut. It looks like all the gear. Oh, wait a minute. 1, 2. And potentially, like, you're almost top 10 are the girls that finished the first workout were in your top field. Like, how can you really not say they belong there? So I don't know. Again, the first workout to me was an outlier there for women, but I mean, your top girls that finished the workout were there. So I don't know. That to me is where you just need to assess and see. That's where it went wrong on the girl side. I don't know why exactly. I'm pretty sure Dave Cash will figure that out. Because to me, that big point gap, either Tia is that effing good, which I potentially think she could be another version of Matt Frazier, or I'll give you the other side. If Matt Frazier didn't get that penalty, mentally, what would it have done to the rest of the field going into Mary? We don't know. Because like I said, I think Tia really set the tone in workout one and completely smoked the field. Like, oh my God, even I was in shock of how crazy that got for her. So, I don't know. That mental game is huge. And Matt Frazier was playing kind of panic workout after he wasn't in first. Would that have been the same outcome on the men's side if the penalty wasn't given? For those that were complaining about the penalty, we would have had potentially 2 boat race CrossFit games, and that's kind of what it's been. I don't know. So, just my thoughts. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed the programming. I feel like this year's programming did a great job of showing you that idea that you don't have to have a 315 clean and jerk, a huge strength background to be an elite fit person, because all of these players that we see on top still, they are named athletes. We've seen them at the games. You know, they've had those heavy lift workouts that put them in that hole I spoke about earlier they couldn't crawl back from. And this time, that it was just straight fitness. It was fitness. It was fitness to me at its best when it's simplified and let your athletes bring the show you what's potential in human skin if you just do the work. So those are my thoughts, guys. Overall, again, I enjoyed the CrossFit Games this year as far as programming. The new style of it, again, you had going with open mind considering what we went to. I look forward to seeing what changes they're going to make again. They're going to make more changes. I know they will. A lot of sanctionals coming up. I look forward to getting back into the open scene again. Open's coming around. And yeah, I look forward. I'm training. I'm hoping to give a run into the West Coast going into January. So I'm training for that as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this video.